So welcome to Words and Pictures Festival 2021. We are so excited to have you here. This is our 5th year doing Words and Pictures at Fort Vancouver Regional Libraries and our 2nd doing it online. My name is Blake Kincaid and I am the Vancouver Engagement Manager at the Downtown Branch. I am joined by Rebecca Chervney, oops, did I say it wrong, who works at Cascade Park. And she'll be helping out. Just a few housekeeping things before I introduce our speakers. Please keep yourself muted while the authors are speaking. You can put questions in the chat. We will monitor them and ask them at the end. And so now I'm going to do our first introduction and then we can get going. Right. And so our first speaker is Lydia K Valentine. She is a playwright and poet, director and dramaturg, editor and educator. Through her own writing and the projects to which she contributes under Lyderary Ink, Lydia always seeks to amplify the voices of those who are often stifled, ignored, or marginalized in what has been the accepted narrative of the United States. Lydia's writing has appeared in online and print publications such as Angel's Flight, Literary West, the Pitkin Review, and Shout, an anthology of resistance poetry and short fiction. Her first poetry collection, Brief Black Candles, is expected in winter 2020 and from Not a Pipe Publishing. Lydia is also the poet laureate of the city of Tacoma. Yay. And so take it away, Lydia.
Yes, and the book did come out in November 2020, which is super exciting. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry for not updating my bio for the crew. I'm going to start with October is Tacoma Arts Month, and this is the 20th year of Tacoma Arts Month. And I wrote a poem to celebrate that for the city. And it's called A Poem for Tacoma's Creatives. I like to share my screen just because I know not everybody processes in the same way. And we'll go from there. All right. A poem for Tacoma's creatives. Art in our gritty city of destiny is a fire that never rests. It erupts in a torrent carrying pride and passion, hope and healing. It smolders in coals that refuse to be banked, even when buried in packed ash layers of economic disappointments. Even when drowning in the insistent flood of gentried waters from the north and from the south. It flickers sly fingers, reaching out to awaken our eyes, our ears, our mind, burning its way through us or to us or both. Art in our gritty city of destiny is a fire that never rests because it does not forget the past. This living blaze honors ancestral caretakers of this land and the ancestral caretakers of our hearts. It remembers and recognizes those harmed and those herded away. It works to remove rooted blights of injury and injustice. Its smoke whispers our worries and wishes. It sings the songs of our mountain, our city's most sincere soul. It fills our mouths, our throats, our lungs with an air that sustains us, even when the suffocating toxins from rancid politicians and societal systems cannot be escaped. Even when the waves of this virus continue to crest higher and higher, and there is little civil air, safe air to breathe. Our art, our people are a fire of gritty persistence and power, and we will never rest. All right, just gonna move into another one. So there is a new poetry anthology coming out from Blue Cactus Press this December, I believe. And I have a few poems in that. The title of the collection, the anthology, is We Need a Reckoning. And this poem that I wrote last year on New Year's Eve. The title of the anthology actually comes from this. They pulled the title from a line in this poem. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. New Year's Eve 2020. They seem to think that when the ball drops and the bells peal, these layers of grime and greed, of gaslight and gunpowder, of grief and grievances will peel away. Consequence can't be trammeled up so easily. These 4 years are not the foundation of our country's faults. Blood-washed sediment began to settle on these shores 400 years ago, and even more has piled on and piled on and piled on. Every new year, every new day since. Truckloads and handfuls of malice, sly, verbal microbullets at best, state-sanctioned viral murders at worst, are dumped and thrown like ground glass powder cast into the air. We of all castes breathe this airborne malignance. We of all castes are coated with it, inside and out. Black life here has forever been a bloody business. Our pain, the perverse entertainment of picnic lynchings, phone filmed lynchings, souvenir postcards, and social media posts. So no, the reign of this unprecedented poser president was not the start, but it and he legitimized and lithified these layers of toxicity. What we need is a reckoning, a wrecking ball, to reduce the white supremacist systems of this republic to dust, to exhume and exalt our milled bones and our milled benevolence. Then maybe the be all and end all, the dream that could be America will be. All right. To become poet laureate, you have to submit an application. So I'm going to read a few poems from my application for poet laureate this year. I tried 3 times. All right. This one isn't quite finished yet. I'm still working on this piece. As most poets will tell you, or a lot of poets will tell you, that we're never quite done tinkering with our poems. And I feel like this one actually has a second part coming. They lay, pressed like slabs of meat curing, in the salt of each other's tears, in the salt of each other's sweat, the salt of each other's piss, packed like rows of ballots steaming in the anti-womb of enslavers' ships, unforming from feathered promise, transforming into hawkers' wares that will be slurped whole, swallowed with only a soft crunch, sustenance for the gluttonous beast, manifesting stolen destinies. All right, we heard this one already. A beggar's lament. If wishes were horses, I'd ride mine to the sun. That truth bringer, that radiant mother, watches me now and waits. If wishes were horses, I'd ride a fearsome mount, as big as forever, as loud as lost love. The thundering Clydesdale would look up at her in wonder. If wishes were horses, I'd ride, make my child well. She'd crunch 2-ton blocks of tear salt, slurp down the wet fruit of my heart given freely, take great gulps from a trench filled with blood, drained from every vein. If wishes were horses, I'd ride salvation to you. I'd bathe your eyes and flush your ears in her mare's milk to stop the visions and silence the voices escape from the veil that won't let you rest, that won't let you think, that steal away your safety, your sense, and you'd return to yourself, my love, and you'd return to me. This next poem, The Crane Wife, you might be familiar with the story, The Crane Wife. There are lots of different versions of it. Um, but a group of poet friends and I were writing via Zoom, and one of them shared this article by C.J. Hauser in the Paris Review. Um, and a line from that article, she references the Crane Wife, and her article is called Like the Crane Wife. But a line says, "To keep becoming a woman is so much self-erasing work." And that spoke to me and prompted this piece. Like the Crane Wife. My feathers are a thick blanket of needful truth. They sigh, achingly smooth against my faithless fingers as I pluck them out. Every night, each one sways a slow, silent goodbye down to the surface of the water, seeking a final touch, but finding only my rippled reflection. This stranger, this untruth I am becoming with each extracted feather. I don't look. There is somewhere a tangled mass of me, all of the self I've sacrificed to be safe, to take up less of the space deemed for those of other shapes, other skins, to keep becoming a woman, a human being in their eyes. All right, I'm going to switch documents. Thank you for being patient. These are some new pieces that I've been working on, and they're, they're in the process, but I really like them. And just give me a time check when I should stop running my mouth. All right. This piece is called A Prelude to Faith. I'm horrible at titles. You should know that. Laughter is the beginning of prayer. We send our breaths, our invisible selves, racing to the heavens on the trilling or trumpeting anthem of our soul's most sincere goodness. Laughter is the beginning of prayer. Our mouth, our open mouths confess dark cavities of shame, lustful tongues used in other moments of inhibition. Laughter is the beginning of prayer. We close our eyes to see the light blooming inside and offer up our hands as if to say, yes, this is glory. Yes, this is all. All right. This next one is about my mom, and my sister's on here. So it's about mommy, sister. My mother's body. You rushing down the long, chilling steepness of the back porch steps, arms raised like L-shaped twigs bracketing your bent, scarf-covered head. Frown and furrowed brow, eyes down to watch the blurred swiftness of your slippered feet. You in that classy Diane Carroll work wig, the white high-necked blouse that made your skin look so golden, untouched. Your rarely painted red lips stretched in delight as you look down at Logan, the first boy from your own body that you'd raise. You reaching for the deck from your partner across the table, reaching for the deck from your partner across the table. Daddy, who never tried, always said, shake 'em up, Lo, as he held out the cards that he knew you'd take, as surely as you took his hand, took his name, forever. I often write prompts. I love prompts. And I was in a class with a poet, a blue cactus press workshop that was offered. And Michael Hefflinger was the poet. And the title of the workshop was Lie Your Ass Off. And one of the things that we had to do was make a list of some jobs that we've never had, but we think that we would be amazing at. And this poem came from my list, and it was the job that I chose was a very direct life coach. Um, I am autistic and I often don't have a filter. I work at it, but sometimes the very blunt things that are in my mind come out. So, lie your ass off, a very direct life coach. People rarely want to hear exactly what you're thinking. No, not you. I don't know you. Maybe someone does want to hear your uncensored thoughts. Maybe you have a better handle on how exact you should be when sharing exactly what you're thinking. I try. Anti-anxiety meds even allow me to be successful most of the time. I can adeptly absent myself when I feel my exactness bubbling to the surface. But when I'm worn down from too long, spent around others, too little sleep, or too much stress, I get what my mom called diarrhea of the mouth. Foul, right? At least it's not as revolting as that. At least I hope it's not. All right.
And
Is that
we've reached a spot where we have 10 more minutes,
okay?
and that's reserved for questions from the
Awesome.
audience. But it could, if we don't have any questions, if you had more to read, that is also an option.
Cool.
And also the other authors can ask questions if they have any. And there weren't any in the chat, so it's kind of, if anybody has questions, now is a great time.
I was sorry for getting here late,
No worries.
but I as I listened to you read your work, you seem to have a real good grasp of like the tactile, experience. Even if you're not describing something physical, it almost seemed to have kind of a physical weight to it.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm wondering if that's something that you really tried to work on. Does that come through naturally? Like, because it's just fun to see poetry have such a sense of place. That's something I usually only see in prose.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny that you say that because I once got a critique back of a series of poems, and it was like, this is not poetry, it's prose. Take out the line stops. And that was it. And none of the poems were chosen, obviously. But I really like how things look on the page, and I really do go for that that sense of feeling, that because I think I experience the world in that way very clearly, and also just to allow people, even if they can't connect exactly with the experience about which I'm speaking, they can at least have a sense of what that feels like through the language. Yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, I have another poem I'm happy to read. And this one, hold on, I'm just finding it. This one is another one. I'm working on a series that that explores difference, disability, autism, which is a huge piece of who I am. And I try to, a lot of my creativity comes from working with other people. And a really good friend of mine, Tina Ontiveros, who we were in the same grad program. If you love memoirs, you should take a look at her memoir called Rough House. It's set in Oregon primarily. and it's beautiful, heartbreaking, and heartwarming work. She did not pay me for that plug. I really love that book. But she and I got together this summer because it was our first time since COVID being able to celebrate our books coming out together. And this prompt was from Ocean Vuong's poem Kissing in Vietnamese, which is a great poem. And again, I'm exploring some of my differences in my work. So I will read this one and then turn it over to our next reader. My other self would kiss as if there is no warning in delight, as if another's forehead, cheek, lips are easy, welcoming targets for her adoration. As if the weight of second and third guesses don't press themselves against her lips instead. With her kisses, she'd share a simple, bright pop of affection that another would receive without presuming pretextual subtext that she would share without Olympian-level mental gymnastics. My other self would kiss as if she were a being at ease, and the world would expect nothing less.
And we do have another question in the chat, and I'll read it.
Okay.
So you have some super fans. They say super fans here. You write so much and so lovingly about your family. How have they informed, supported, and responded to your work?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm a very family-oriented person. My parents instilled that in me. Not purposefully, but just in their being. My grandmother died young, and my mother was only 25, and she and my dad got married and raised my aunt and uncles. So we had them as older siblings, but that showed me so much about the importance of family and always being there for and with your family. And I have a picture of my mommy right here. And I'm fairly close with my siblings. We are from Pennsylvania, but there are 4 of us out here in the Pacific Northwest now. Both of my sisters, Lynette, who's on this Zoom, moved out here when we kind of made the decision to move out here together, and we all moved at the same time. And my youngest brother just moved out in December. And right now, my sister Lynette, she lives about 20 minutes away from me, which is the furthest we've ever been apart geographically. And so I really rely on that sense of family. I think my collection definitely speaks of family too. Because I write a lot about my own personal experience, family comes through. And I've always felt supported by my siblings. And our parents are gone now. So they haven't seen all of this, and that's the only dark spot, I think, in becoming poet laureate, getting my book published. All of that is that they haven't been able to see that. How have they responded? My kids are great about it. I mean, my daughter is one of my biggest supporters. She interviewed me on my website, lideraryink.com, and several times for the promotion of the book. And my son is 16 and quite busy with being 16. So, he shows up at readings when he can. But he'll listen to poems. He'll say, "Oh, that's nice, Mom." And then moves on. When I gave him a copy of my book, he was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna reread this. So I think I'll just give it back to you." And when I told him, I said, "You haven't said like congratulations, I'm proud of you." He said, "I think it's implied." And he also is artistic like his mother. So that was really funny. But yeah, I wouldn't be me without my family, and I wouldn't be me without the support of my family. Yeah. Thank you for asking. And Ben and Crystal, that's awesome. for being super fans. Like, I don't know that I know you, but that's super cool. Ah, Ben and Crystal. I do know them, so they are awesome people. And Ben is a great poet in his own right and novelist. All right, I think my time is over.
Thank you for putting that link in the chat. So
Yeah.
if people are interested, you can see in the chat.
Yeah, I'll
It's
put a couple of different things here.
Lideraryink.com, which is good. Your name's Lydia, so literary. I like it.
Exactly.
So we have 3 more authors who are going to speak. Yes, and you can use the little Zoom clap to clap for Lydia, or you can just go like that. We have 3 more authors, and we've got limited time, but there will be time for questions. The next 3 authors are going to take their turns doing some readings, and then we'll have questions for the whole group. We should have some time left for that at the end. So I'm gonna zip ahead, and we're going to introduce our next author so that we have time for everybody. So for those of you that joined us after the last introduction, let me just welcome you to Words and Pictures Festival 2021. We're excited to have you here. This is our 5th year doing Words and Pictures and our 2nd doing it online. My name is Blake Kincaid. Please keep yourself muted while our authors speak. And let me introduce our next author, Melanie McCree. Melanie writes both short fiction and full-length novels, usually a mashup of fantasy, thriller, and mystery with lots of humor thrown in. She won honorable mention in a Writer's Digest yearly contest and has had her short stories published in a Chicken Soup for the Soul collection and on one memorable Halloween in the Columbian. She once wrote an interactive online adventure story as part of a library summer reading program, and for a while she edited and wrote content for a tween newsletter. She currently has 1 novel completed and under consideration for publication in her GF13 series, a fantasy thriller tentatively titled Daggers Drawn. You can find her blog and read some of her short stories on her website, melaniemccree.site.
Yep.
So over to you, Melanie.
So this is actually one of the short stories that's on the site. It's called The Witness. Me and Claire were out night running. We have to do it on the road because she can't see much in the woods when it's dark out. It's no big deal for running at night, even though she's 14 and pretty, because I go furry when I run at night, and nobody's going to mess with teeth like mine, even if they could get close enough without me smelling them. We're almost done with the run, and Claire's getting tired. I can tell when she's really tired because her sweat smells saltier and sort of heavy, and her feet hit the road harder. So I slow down too, because we're on one of the back roads in the middle of the night, and I'm not just going to run ahead and leave her by herself. And Claire's all, wouldn't it be freaky if your brother jumped out at us right now? Because he used to do that a lot back when we were in middle school. And I'm like, you wish. And she's all, it's not like I like him or anything, which is a lie. She totally loves my brother. She's so into him, it's not even funny. And then we hear this growling. Claire goes quiet and stands closer to me, and I want to protect her, but the problem is I can't smell anything but normal forest, trees and gravel and bugs and night air and nocturnals. I can smell all those, but my nose isn't catching a serious predator scent. And trust me, I know an apex predator's growl when I hear it. So I blow back real low, the one you do that lets them know you aren't screwing around. It'll get ugly if they don't back off. And I bump my head against Claire's shoulder because she smells like panic and she needs to take some deep breaths. And suddenly something leaps at us incredibly fast. All I could see was a blur. And like I said, I have really good night vision. It jumps out and then it's gone. And it's got Claire. And she's screaming, even though I told her that is the worst thing you can do, like the absolute worst. Screams are music when you're hungry. I still couldn't smell whatever it was, but I could smell Claire's blood. So I followed that into the woods, howling my head off. I was like, Dad, please hear me, please, please. And just praying that he would. He has good hearing, my dad, super good. I followed the thing a fair ways, maybe 5 minutes running flat out. And the whole time I'm waiting for that boom of smell that says something just got torn open. If I smelled that, I know Claire was dead. When something alive gets torn open, it's like somebody popped a blood balloon. Sorry, that's kind of gross, but that's how strong the smell is. And I get to this clearing and the creature has Claire on the ground and it's standing over her waiting for me. Like, I'm gonna eat this, see if you can stop me kind of thing. And Claire finally stops screaming and gets the panic under control like she's supposed to. I can still smell tears and snot, but anybody would be crying. It's not her fault. I honestly have no idea what the creature was. It was about 12 feet tall, maybe a little more, and hairy all over. It reminded me of an orangutan kind of, but also of a bear with bat ears. And it had 4 eyes and a line across its forehead, 2 over its snout and 2 further back. The snout was the bear-looking part. It had sharper teeth than a bear, though, sharper claws, too. I thought 2 things. 1, that if I didn't fight, Claire was going to get eaten right in front of me. And 2, that if I did fight, I'd lose and we'd both get eaten. That's how it works. But look, Claire is mine. Not like romantically. I mean, you're totally taking this the wrong way. She's got my scent on her. She's mine. The creature knew it, too. I got down low and showed my teeth and got ready to jump. Well, I'll die someday, you know, might as well do it for the right reason. But suddenly my dad shows up literally out of nowhere and he's got Brian with him. And I'm like, when did Brian come home? I didn't even know he'd be home this weekend. But with Dad and Brian there, I feel a lot better. My dad is state alpha. I don't know if anybody ever told you that. He's alpha for the whole state of Colorado. And as long as Brian doesn't screw up again, he's going to take over in a couple of years when he's earned his master's and he can take our dad in a fight. Brian is big when he's furry. So you don't mess with my dad and Brian. They come at the creature from either side, jumping and grabbing and trying to pull it down like you do. And it's trying to get them with its claws and teeth, but Dad and Brian are too fast for it. They're only getting grazed a little bit and the creature's bleeding like crazy, strips torn off all over its body. And finally, I can smell it. I guess it has some way of hiding its scent, but not when it gets hurt. I'm not sure I can explain this next part to you in a way you'll understand. My nose works differently than yours, but the creature smelled like bad blood, like old bones cracked open and that weird sweetness of dead things. It's really old, centuries probably. My dad would know better than me. He smelled all sorts of monsters. Anyway, with Dad and Brian and the creature all ripping into each other, I get in the mood to fight too. So I try to run in and help like a moron, but Brian turns and snarls at me and Dad gives me this look like, what are you doing? Seriously. So instead I wait until I can get to Claire and then I run in and she wraps her arms around my neck and crawls on my back and we are out of there, like gone. And Claire starts crying really hard, but by then I don't even care because I'd be crying too if I could. I whine when I'm furry. So I'm whining like I'm 6 months old and Claire's crying her face off. And then we both start laughing because it's like we've got helium in our brains. And everything is the funniest joke we've ever heard in our whole lives. And I guess you know the rest. I took Claire here and you guys called her parents and they came and got her. My dad said it was okay if I stayed over. So I rode with them. I slept on Claire's bed, curled up on her feet. She didn't like that much, but I needed to be close, you know? I needed to know she was okay. She's my best friend. I'd tear the world apart for her. So yeah, that's my statement, I guess. That's everything that happened. Except, okay, one more thing. I'm just a teenager and I know you probably feel weird about listening to a teenager telling you stuff. And I really respect the job you guys do. But that thing got away before my dad and Brian could kill it. That's why more people are dying. It's still out there. This isn't your world. You've got your guns and your body armor and whatever, and you think that makes you invincible. You're not. You're little birds. You shouldn't try to find it. I mean that. Just let Dad and Brian deal with it. Stay inside, lock the door, wait until we tell you it's safe. Because the thing is, and I mean, I swear I would never, so you don't have to worry or anything. But the thing is, you smell like food. What's that? But, thank you. It was so different from Lydia's. I'm like, oh, this is really going to be an abrupt translation.
Oh, on time and under budget.
Thank you.
We've got very limited time for our authors, so it's very impressive. Impressive time management. And did everybody get a chance to
Yeah.
do their clapping?
I
All
love
right,
where
well,
you I love where you stopped.
Oh,
Was that the complete story? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Because now it makes me like that last line. It makes me. I'm like, uh-oh, I need to go back and reread that story because I think I know what's going on now.
all right, we're gonna go on to our next author. and that's Martha Wiley. And Martha is the author of The Nerviest Girl in the World, The Prairie Thief, Fox and Crow Are Not Friends.
No,
In-
no, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is, but you're not reading my bio.
Oh, well, you must not have gotten in here in the proper alphabetical order.
There are two people with the last name of Wiley, so
Ah,
you.
I don't see another Wiley in here. Oh,
It's on the website.
well, that's interesting. It's on the website. All right.
Well, I mean, I can just tell it. It's not that thrilling or complicated even.
That would probably be more efficient. I'm sorry about that. I just didn't have it in the document I was given.
So I've been a reader and a writer since I was old enough to put pencil to paper. And I'm in the middle of doing a book about immigrants to Germany. The immigrants come from countries all over the world, and each immigrant has his or her own story. And yeah, so I've been published in a few places, but none of these stories have been published. So we're hoping for the best on this. This is called The Coffee Break. Elvin gently set her bag on the table next to Mira, her partner in the adult German class for immigrants. She unloaded her notebook, her dictionary, her textbook, her workbook, and all those pencils. She caught Mira's eye and winked as she then carefully withdrew a new glass-lined thermos. Elvin placed it upright on the table between them and showed Mira the 2 porcelain coffee cups she left in the bag. It's for the break. Ah, good, that's good, Mira smiled in anticipation. Blonde Mira from Russia and dark-haired Elvin from Turkey could only talk together in the entry-level German they were learning in class, but they had found other ways to communicate with nods and smiles. Last week, Mira had brought hot tea in a thermos to share with Elvin, prepared the way she had learned from her mother, brewed exactly 5 minutes and sweetened with sugar beet syrup. Yesterday, Elvin had mimed drinking from a coffee cup and pointed to herself, saying, "Tomorrow, I bring coffee." Elvin had bought a thermos with the coins she painstakingly hoarded after paying for groceries. It cost more than she could afford, but she told herself the thermos would last a long time and could be used by her husband and her children. This morning, she had brewed real Turkish coffee with a pinch of salt, a lump of sugar, and a spoonful of butter in the pot, then decanted it into the thermos. As she screwed the lid down tightly, she hoped that this would help to build her friendship with Mira. Elvin had no real friends in Germany yet. This was a start. Herr Ludwig, their teacher, with his hair as usual uncombed and sticking out every which way, called the class to order. After the usual preliminaries of reading the weather report and taking attendance, he began a lecture about the necessity of keeping one's table and floor clean. No chewing gum, no scratches on the tabletops, no candles. Mira and Elvin looked at each other. No candles? Candles in a classroom? Perhaps they hadn't understood. Elvin tentatively raised her hand. "Excuse me, what means candles?" "Candles, candles," Herr Ludwig said impatiently. "Things that burn." He pantomimed holding and lighting a candle, and most of the 20 other students in the class understood. Herr Ludwig continued with his lecture. Frau Director Heide had inspected the classroom yesterday and found the desks and floors dirty. She had even found gum stuck to the undersides of the tables. As if choreographed, the students bent down to view the underside of the tables. Sure enough, Mira and Elvin found chewed gum attached to the underside of their table. They looked at each other again. Were they expected to clean it? Mira raised her hand and asked if the students were expected to keep the classroom clean. "Are we, Putzfrauen, cleaning women?" There were mumbles of general agreement from the other students. Taking encouragement from that, Mira continued in her broken and incorrect German. "Doesn't the school have Putzfrauen? They must clean the floors and desks, not us." She became more and more excited and lapsed into Russian without thinking. "The school should not expect the students to do this kind of cleaning. That's why they have janitors, and twice a year the building superintendent should be cleaning the windows and the blinds. I have noticed these are very dirty." Some of the other students from Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan spoke Russian. They began to add their comments, forming a growing chorus of mixed Russian and German. Elvin glanced quickly around the room, seeing hands tightening around pencils, bodies leaning forward with conviction. She couldn't understand the Russian, but she could tell that emotions were heated. Although Elvin had dropped out of school in Turkey after the 5th grade to help at home, she knew this was not the right behavior for a classroom. As Mira's voice got louder, Elvin reached over and patted the table gently in front of her. Mira looked up sharply at Elvin, eyes narrowed for a brief moment, then she nodded in rueful apology and sat back in her chair. Elvin was relieved that Mira hadn't taken offense at her intrusion. At the same time, Herr Ludwig raised his hand, palm to the class, and in the German classroom behavior they had learned in the first few days, the students immediately quieted. Are we all agreed? We will not write on the desks and we will not chew gum in class. Yes? The students' heads nodded all across the room. Herr Ludwig continued yesterday's grammar discussion of dative and accusative declensions. Elvin had a difficult time with the whole concept of declensions, the way that nouns and adjectives change depending on their position in the sentence. She felt more and more stupid as the lesson went on. Her husband said she was stupid and maybe he was right. She just could not understand why some prepositions required a dative declension and others required accusative. I can't learn this, she thought, biting on the tip of her pencil. I just can't do schoolwork. I'm too old, and let's face it, I'm too stupid. She bent her head and sank lower into her chair, no longer copying the examples the teacher had written on the board in front of the class. Mira, watching her partner out of the corner of her eye, raised her hand. Herr Ludwig, our break? He checked the time on the wall clock over the door. Oh, yes, sorry. A 15-minute break is in order. He left the room for the teacher's lounge across the hall. Around the room, students stood and stretched. Some left to smoke a cigarette or visit the restroom. Mira touched Elvin's shoulder and said, Is coffee time? Elvin sat up straighter. Oh, yes, coffee. From her bag, she took a white linen napkin and opened it out on the table between them. The flowered porcelain cups and saucers she placed on the cloth flattened the creases she had meticulously ironed into the napkin the night before. Elvin unscrewed the lid of the thermos and poured the hot, steaming coffee into the cups. Around the room, Elvin could tell the other students smelled the fragrance of the coffee. She saw them look down at their own water bottles or soda cans and heard them sigh in envy. She would show Mira what coffee should be like. Elvin motioned to Mira to start. After Mira's long, pale fingers picked up her cup, Elvin lifted her own. She held it in both hands and raised it a little toward Mira in a toast to their blossoming friendship. Mira cautiously took a sip of coffee. Elvin saw her swallow and watched anxiously. Did she like it? Mira's eyes widened and she took another sip. She looked at Elvin and smiled and nodded. It's good. Mira took another swallow. Not too warm, not too cold. Elvin was worried. The right temperature is important to appreciate coffee. She was afraid the thermos had allowed the coffee to cool too much. Mira shook her head. All is perfect. Elvin saw her take another swallow. She did like it. Elvin took a deep breath and a sip of her own coffee. Mira was right. It was perfect. The end.
Thank you. That was, everybody can do their clapping. That was Martha Wiley. And I was reading the wrong bio, and it's good that somebody mentioned that they're all on the website correctly, because I'm going to reference that for reading John's bio. We have our next author is going to speak, and his name is John Wolfe. John Wolfe is a librarian lurking in the Pacific Northwest. When he's not shelving books or processing holds, he likes making things up and putting them on paper. Recent work has appeared in the For Never After anthology, Coffin Blossoms anthology, Starship Sofa, and Tough Crime. He subsists on a strict diet of good coffee, bad movies, and funny podcasts. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Blake. Thanks to everybody. Kind of agree with Lydia. You're never really done working on your stories. And this is one that even as I was printing it out, I'm like, fix this, fix that. It's a story called Out of Season. I'm with you there, Martha. I'm shopping it around from place to place, trying to find someone who will take it. And I'm just going to read a part of it. That's a deer, just saying. You're stupid, I'm just saying. Tyler backed away and fiddled with his phone. He had no dog in this fight, and either way, both men were sort of right. It really did look like a deer. Mo had said so when he spotted it, but Kenny wasn't lying either. Mo was maybe the dumbest man Tyler had ever met. Kenny himself running a close second. Tyler's two brothers-in-law were about the same average intelligence as the rest of this frozen backwater, which put them somewhere just above pond life. Getting onto one knee without ripping the seat of his pants was tough, but Mo finally struggled down for a closer look. The animal's antlers flared up in an odd spiral crown. Mo held the head up with them, and a gray piece of brain slithered out of the bullet hole and fell hissing into the snow. Tyler fought the urge to vomit and wandered back towards the truck, looking for a signal. Apparently, Verizon didn't think this patch of heaven was worth a cell tower. Mo carried on. Look it, horns. Deer got horns. Kenny didn't even bother looking down at his brother. Moose got horns. Them's antlers. Yeah, like I said, deer got antlers. It ain't a deer. Then how come you shot it? You sighted it for me, dummy. Tyler held up his phone, aching for just one bar. He needed to hear Amy's voice. So far, this whole hunting trip had just been farts, talking about farts, and the occasional dirty joke. Just a simple hello from his wife would suffice. Come on, he chanted to the tech gods above. All he got was a sky filled with cruel, steely clouds and more snow. The wind howled through the nearby trees and rattled their bare limbs. Not a half hour ago had been clear, albeit freezing, skies and a fiery sunset. Now just more snow drifted down in a lacy curtain and turned the dead animal in just a shapeless thing. Tyler supposed he should be happy. Mo and Kenny promised the hunting trip would make him family. He didn't feel like family. He just felt tired, cold, and disgusted. He hated how excited he felt when Mo first spotted the animal in the empty field, and how his excitement flared into outright bloodlust when Kenny brought it down with one shot. He had even given a half-hearted war whoop, earning him a backslap from Mo. He looked back at the two of them now. How Amy shared any relation with them was an affront to genetics. They stood over the body, arguing whether they had even bagged a deer or not. Tyler shook his head. Weren't they supposed to know better? But the time for debate seemed to be at an end. Mo charged Kenny and bowled the skinny man clean over. Kenny kicked Mo's legs out from under him and leapt on top, snarling. Soon the two were tangled together on the snowy ground, spitting and punching. Guys, come on, quit it. Tyler ran over and caught a stray elbow in his side. He fell directly onto the carcass, fur and snow flying up on impact. He rolled off and came face to face with dead eyes above a lolling tongue. Mo and Kenny finished fighting to laugh and watch Tyler skitter away in terror. He had never touched anything dead his whole life, and now he had blood all over him. Kenny laughed. Ain't like bagging a soybean burger, is it? Mo extended a hand to Tyler. Come on up. Tyler took it, but the veneer of fresh blood on his gloves sent him sliding back to the ground. Kenny kept laughing, even as he unsheathed his hunting knife. Tyler struggled back up to his feet alone and looked at his gloves. The animal's hair stuck on the bloody side. Even in the dying twilight, it shimmered like silver. A sudden urge struck, and before common sense could tell him not to, Tyler sniffed his gloves. The smell hit immediately. He shot back up, eyes wide and heart hammering. He caught Kenny looking up at him from the body, cigarette in mouth and knife in hand. He studied Tyler like another hunting trophy. What? There had to be some way to say it without sounding like an absolute lunatic. Mo and Kenny already thought so little of him, but even Amy would call the men in white coats if she heard what Tyler had to say. She might even help them with his straitjacket. So he did the same thing he had done when Amy asked if he wanted to visit her family that Christmas. Tyler lied. Nothing. Kenny grunted, shook his head, and shoved his knife into the animal's hind end. Steam rose as guts met snow with a thick, wet sound. The smell worsened, stronger than the blood on Tyler's hands. He almost choked. Didn't Kenny smell it? A heavy hand fell on Tyler's shoulder. He screamed, spun, and met Mo. He laughed, and to his relief, Mo did too. Have a beer. Mo swung a cold one into his hands. Tyler fumbled with the pull tab, his fingers turned fat and stupid by heavy gloves. Mo put an arm around his shoulder, pulled him tight. Up close, the big man's B.O. kept some of the strange stink away. Mo swigged his can of beer and sighed with pleasure. Not bad. See the antlers on that sucker? 10-point buck. Not a buck. Kenny said and continued peeling back behind. A great gust of wind hammered down before Mo could argue. Snow flurries danced all around them and threw the sweet stench right back into his face. He looked at Tyler with wide eyes and open mouth. He smelled it too. Mo spoke up, but his words were quickly swallowed by the wind. Kenny paused and shouted back, "What?" "I said," Mo screamed, "you don't smell it." "Smell what?" Tyler hurried back to the truck and climbed into the bed, holding his phone up higher. He had to be sure. He typed in his query and watched with hungry anticipation as the wheel spun and spun. Kenny repeated, "Smell what?" The storm almost drowned out Mo's answer, but Tyler just made it out. "Peppermint. It smells like peppermint." That's it.
Yay.
Well, I'd like to know more about that. You're leaving me in the middle of a story. I want to know about the peppermint smell.
It's a little too long for this, but I just thought I'd read up to that.
Yeah.
Brains is where I live. Brains dribbling out. I'm like, yeah.
First rule of show
They stink.
business. Leave them on.
They
and
stink
more.
when you open them up.
Not like peppermint.
So it's 3:08. We do have a little bit of time left in this session. Although in case people are rushing off, I want to make sure to thank our authors, Lydia Valentine, Melanie McCree, Martha Wiley, and John Wolf, who are all still with us. If anyone has any questions for our authors, you can either unmute yourself or put them in the chat. And if no one has a question for the authors, I have my favorite generic question, which is, if any of you want to tackle this one, what's your favorite piece of advice for an aspiring author?
Read,
Asking for a friend.
read, and read, and read, and read.
My advice is never to use the verb to be. Write whatever you want and then take out all the to be's.
I would second Lydia's advice, and something that I've just started doing now is what I guess thinking about it like running is kind of warm up first. And what I do with that is I write like a 100-word drabble, like just a 100-word story, and then a flash fiction, like about 350-word story. And don't stop, just bam, bam, just puke it out onto the page of what you're generally going to do. And then that kind of warms you up, and maybe you can write a longer version of what you want.
I'd say find somebody who believes in you no matter what. Because it's, it's a long, hard, lonely road. You don't just walk in and get published right then. There's, you get a lot of rejections, a lot of no. So find somebody who's a cheerleader, no matter how bad it is. And then the other thing would be find somebody who knows what they're doing to read your work. Because as many times as you go over it, there are going to be things that you miss. So find somebody smart who can point you in the right direction when you go on too long and use the wrong word or so on. So I've got two, there they are.
A second piece of advice that I've found very helpful the last month or so was, as you're going over your work, editing, which has become kind of one of my favorite parts of it now, strangely. But eventually, that a whole idea of a second pair of eyes, but you may not have access to that, or maybe you've got a deadline. Change the font of your story. Literally make it look different. If it's typed up, print it out in a different font if you can, or read it on your screen in a different font. It will help, actually. I kind of scoffed at it when I first heard it, but it's a neat little trick to kind of give you a new, fresh perspective.
Reading out loud is the same thing. Read it out loud, and that helps too. You hear a lot of mistakes when you read it out loud that you didn't see when you were writing it.
Yeah, I think that's true about the font, because I find when I read something and part of it is on the, like if you're reading in a book and part of it is on the left page, this edition, and then the next edition, that same description of the house or whatever is on the right-hand page, it's a different house in my mind. So I think that switching fonts and moving the text around from one page to another is a good idea.
Got any more secrets for us? Those are all good. How do you stay motivated? Like how do you get past, I mean, I guess you could call it writer's block, but how do you get past those times when you just don't have the energy to sit down and put out the effort?
Anytime I can connect with another creative, that always gives me energy. I have a friend who's a painter, and sometimes we just sit down and she'd talk about what she was painting. I'd talk about some of my ideas, and then we would just go separately and she'd paint and I'd write and then come back together. And it always generated something, even if it wasn't what I was working on, which ties into my second piece, which is maybe start something new. Because it might be that you need a break from whatever it is you have been working on, or try a different genre or something like that.
And we've got one last question in the chat. What are your writing schedules? Times of day, daily, consistent? Do you have a pattern?
I laugh because I do a lot of writing in the middle of the night. When I can't sleep, then I will get up and come down and sit in front of the computer and work some more. And then after a while, either the sun comes up or I go back to bed, and that's mine.
You have to be consistent. I noticed that was one of the words that was there. You have to be consistent. But as far as, you know, being inspired, I assume that it's this way for everybody else, but the stories drive you. You know, it's not like you're choosing, I'm going to write today. There's something in the back of your head hammering at you saying, I want out. And sooner or later you let it out. And that's the process for me, is more like giving in, I guess, in some ways.
I mean, consistency with your schedule, I think, is always good. It's not always doable if you're working. So I always carry around the notebook, not to write down the ideas. But like, if an idea hits me, then like just quickly like write down like a scene or the opening that you might think of, just to kind of capture a snapshot of that really quick. I do it in pen, because if it's not working, I want to see it all scratched out as I go back to it. I want kind of the rubble behind me as you work, because writing's an artistic process, and it's just as messy as any other kind of artistic process. You should have chalk dust and paint and chips of whatever you're working on all over you by the time you're done. And it doesn't get any cleaner as you keep going.
And for me, I used to carry a notebook, but that got crazy because I could never find it. But I keep notes on my phone if a line hits, or if I hear a word or phrase that I really like. And then that way, if I am feeling like, oh, I don't have anything to write, then I can always go to my notes and take a look at the phrases or notes or whatever has come out, and that usually will inspire me to write. But I write whenever I can. I'm a night owl, so unfortunately I'm most creative super late at night, which doesn't work with a teacher's schedule, but so I just write whenever I can. I need to be more consistent.
We have reached the end of this session. I want to thank everyone for attending. I want to especially thank Lydia Valentine, Melanie McCree, Martha Wiley, and John Wolf, our authors who shared with us. Also, I put a link in the chat, vintagebooks.net. And so a lot of the authors at the events as part of this program have works available for purchase there. So, you know, support your local authors. And get ready for the next session, which is the keynote for tonight. And that's in a little under 15 minutes. So we'll
Thank you,
see you there.
everybody.
Thanks for reading and thanks for having me.